5 college students walked into their night class on a stormy November evening in 2001. None of them ever came out. 11 weeks later, a janitor cleaning out a storage locker in the basement found something that changed everything. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting harsh shadows across the basement corridor of Northridge University's Humanities Building. Raymond Weber, head custodian for 15 years, rattled his master keys as he made his way down the row of abandoned storage lockers. January's bitter chill had somehow penetrated even this subterranean level, and his breath formed small clouds that dissipated into the musty air. "Damn administration," he muttered, squinting at the inventory list in his hand. 20 years I've been telling them to clean out these lockers, and now they want it done yesterday. Locker number 137 stood at the end of the row, rusted, dented, and bearing a padlock that hadn't been opened in years. Raymond tried 3 keys before finding the right one. The lock clicked open, falling into his palm with a cold, heavy finality. The locker door groaned as he pulled it open, years of disuse evident in its reluctant hinges. His flashlight beam cut through the darkness, illuminating a cloud of disturbed dust motes swirling in the stale air. At first, it appeared empty, save for the expected abandonment detritus, old textbooks, forgotten scarves, the archaeological layers of a university's forgotten past. Then his light caught something in the back corner. A navy blue duffel bag, its fabric worn and stained with what looked disturbingly like dried blood. Raymond hesitated, some primal instinct warning him not to touch it. But curiosity overcame caution. He reached in with gloved hands and carefully pulled the bag forward. The zipper was partially open. Inside, something glinted in his flashlight beam, a rectangular piece of plastic. Raymond widened the opening and froze. 5 student ID cards stared back at him, young faces, bright smiles, names he recognized instantly: Lena Ortiz, Devin Price, Priya Singh, Miles Bennett, Tessa Morgan. "Jesus Christ," he whispered, his hand trembling. Everyone at Northridge knew these names, these faces. They'd been plastered across campus bulletin boards, local newspapers, and eventually national news broadcasts. 5 students who had vanished without a trace from Professor Alden's night ethics class in November 2001. 5 students who had become campus legend, ghost stories told to frightened freshmen during orientation week. Raymond delved deeper into the bag with mounting dread. Beneath the IDs lay a stack of handwritten notes, diagrams of the campus, and a small leather-bound notebook. Its cover was stiff with what was unmistakably dried blood. He carefully opened it to the final page, where a single line of text was scrawled in desperate, hurried handwriting. "We are not alone. Trust no one." The notebook slipped from Raymond's suddenly numb fingers, landing on the concrete floor with a dull thud that echoed through the empty corridor. His mind raced with the implications of what he'd found. 11 weeks after their disappearance, here was the first real evidence, hidden away in a forgotten locker in the very building where they were last seen. He fumbled for his phone, hands shaking so badly he could barely dial. As he waited for campus security to answer, a chill that had nothing to do with the January cold crept up his spine. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, that whatever dark truth had swallowed those 5 students was still here, lurking in the shadows, waiting. Campus security. "This is Raymond Weber," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm in the Humanities Building basement. I found something about those missing students." The silence on the other end lasted only seconds, but to Raymond, it stretched into an eternity. "Don't touch anything else," the voice finally replied. "We're on our way." If you enjoy fictional mysteries like this one, hit subscribe and comment where you're watching from. Our community solves these mysteries together. 20 years later, the same basement corridor looked virtually unchanged. The fluorescent light still flickered, the air still hung heavy with dust and secrets, and locker number 137 remained sealed with police tape that had yellowed with age. Detective Alexandra "Alex" Hayes stood before it, hands tucked into the pockets of her trench coat, her breath forming the same small clouds in the chilled air. Behind her, Dean Harriet Blackwell shifted uncomfortably, the click of her heels on concrete betraying her impatience. "I don't understand why we're reopening old wounds, Detective," Blackwell said, her voice tight with administrative concern. "The university has moved past this tragedy. We have the Memorial Garden, the Scholarship Fund." "With all due respect, Dean Blackwell," Alex interrupted, turning to face the older woman. 5 students disappeared without a trace. Their families haven't moved past anything." Alex ran her fingers through her short, dark hair, a nervous habit from her academy days. She'd been a freshman at North Ridge when it happened, just 18 and wide-eyed with the promise of college life. She remembered the panic that had swept through campus, the search parties combing the surrounding woods, the way students began traveling in groups even during daylight hours. She also remembered Miles Bennett's smile, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he laughed. 3 dates they'd had before he vanished. Barely enough time to call it a relationship, but enough for the memory to linger, for her to feel the weight of what might have been. The case was thoroughly investigated, Blackwell insisted, by local police, state authorities, even the FBI. "And yet," Alex said, turning back to the locker, "no bodies were ever found. No conclusive evidence of what happened. Just 5 students who walked out of Professor Alden's ethics class and disappeared into thin air." She ran her gloved hand over the police tape. "I've spent the past 6 months reviewing the original case files. There are inconsistencies, Dean Blackwell, questions that were never properly answered." The dean's professional demeanor slipped for just a moment, revealing something that might have been fear. What kind of inconsistencies? "For starters, why was this evidence," Alex gestured to the locker, "never fully processed? The initial reports mention blood analysis, fingerprints, but there's no follow-up. The chain of custody documentation ends abruptly in February 2002. "That was before my time," Blackwell said quickly. "I've only been dean for 12 years, Alex nodded, her expression neutral. "I'd like permission to re-examine the locker contents with modern forensic techniques. The university still has the evidence in storage, correct?" "Yes, though I'm not sure." "I already have a court order," Alex interrupted, producing a folded document from her coat pocket. "This authorizes me to access all physical evidence and university records related to the disappearance." Blackwell took the document with a slight tremor in her hands. "The university will cooperate fully, of course," she said, the words sounding rehearsed. "Though I must insist our legal counsel be present during any examination of university property or records." "Of course," Alex agreed. She turned her attention back to the locker, running her fingers along its cold metal surface. "One more thing, Dean Blackwell. I'd like to speak with Professor Alden." The dean's expression tightened. "Thomas Alden hasn't been associated with this university in nearly 20 years. He resigned shortly after the incident. Do you know where I can find him?" "No," Blackwell answered too quickly. "He cut all ties. Now, if you'll excuse me, Detective, I have a budget meeting in 10 minutes. Alex watched the dean's retreating figure until she disappeared around the corner. The click of her heels faded, leaving only the hum of the ancient fluorescent lights and the weight of 2 decades of unanswered questions. She pulled out her phone and dialed a familiar number. "Walter, it's Alex Hayes. I'm at North Ridge now." She paused, listening to the gruff voice of her former mentor. "Yes, exactly where we discussed. The dean is being cooperative, but there's something off about her reactions." Another pause. "I'll meet you at the station in an hour. We need those original case files." As she ended the call, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that the walls were listening, that the university itself was holding its breath. 20 years of silence weighed heavily in the air, but Alex was determined to give voice to the truth, whatever it might be. For Lena, Devin, Priya, Miles, and Tessa. For the families still waiting for answers, and maybe, just a little, for the 18-year-old girl who had once fallen for a theater major's smile. The fluorescent light above her head flickered once, twice, then went dark, plunging the corridor into momentary shadow before reluctantly sputtering back to life. A warning, perhaps, or a welcome. Retired Detective Walter Grimes looked exactly as Alex remembered, weathered, perpetually tired, with the kind of eyes that had seen too much and forgotten nothing. His small office at the back of the Northridge Police Department was a time capsule of his 40-year career, walls lined with commendations and photos of solved cases. Conspicuously absent was any mention of the night class case, as the media had dubbed it. "You're stirring up a hornet's nest, Hayes," Walter said, pushing a mug of black coffee across his desk. "That case nearly broke me." Alex accepted the coffee gratefully. "That's why I need your help, Walter. You were lead detective. You interviewed everyone. You found the evidence in the locker." "That janitor found it," Walter corrected, leaning back in his chair. "Raymond Weber. Good man. Died about 5 years ago, heart attack." He pulled open a drawer and extracted a thick folder, its edges worn from frequent handling. "My personal copies," he explained, seeing Alex's surprised expression. "Never could let it go." Alex opened the folder reverently. Inside were crime scene photos, interview transcripts, forensic reports, a paper trail of a mystery that had consumed her mentor's career and now threatened to do the same to hers. "Tell me about them," she said quietly. "Not what's in the reports. Tell me who they were." Walter's eyes clouded with memory. He reached for a framed photo on his desk, his daughter's college graduation. "They were just kids," he said, "smart kids with their whole lives ahead of them." He sorted through the papers, extracting 5 student ID photos, the same ones found in the duffel bag. Lena Ortiz, 21, junior majoring in pre-med, worked 3 campus jobs to support her family back in New Mexico. Resident advisor in Hawthorne Hall, the responsible one, according to her friends, always early to class, always prepared. He placed her photo on the desk, then selected another. Devin Price, 22. Transfer student from somewhere out west. Records were vague. Troubled past, according to rumors, but charming enough to be popular despite being new. Dating Tessa Morgan on and off. A third photo joined the others. Priya Singh, 20, international student from Mumbai, computer science major, quiet, kept to herself, but observant. Worked at the campus cafe. Roommate said she'd been acting strange the week before she disappeared, jumpy, paranoid. Walter's hand hesitated over the 4th photo. "Miles Bennett," he said, glancing at Alex. 21, theater major, the social butterfly of the group. Everyone liked him, but no one really knew him. Rumors about substance abuse, though toxicology on his dorm room turned up nothing. Alex kept her face carefully neutral as she looked at Miles's smiling face. 3 dates. A kiss in the rain outside the student union. Plans for a 4th date that never happened. "And Tessa Morgan," Walter concluded, placing the final photo on the desk. 21. Pre-law student, sharp, ambitious, skeptical about everything, in a rocky relationship with Devin. Was conducting some kind of independent research project, but we never found her notes or discovered what it was about. 5 faces, 5 lives, 5 abrupt endings. What connected them, Alex asked, though she knew the answer. Professor Thomas Alden's contemporary ethics night class, Walter replied. Tuesdays and Thursdays, 7 to 9 p.m. in Thornton Hall, room 301. They weren't friends before the class, moved in different circles, but something about that class brought them together. He pulled out a 6th photo, a distinguished-looking man in his 50s with penetrating eyes and a severe expression. Alden was brilliant by all accounts, specialized in ethical implications of scientific research, had government connections, though he was vague about the details. Students either loved him or were terrified of him. Alex studied the professor's face, trying to read the secrets behind his stern gaze. And the night they disappeared, November 13th, 2001, Walter's expression darkened. Terrible storm that night. Power outages across campus. According to Alden, class was dismissed early around 8:15 when the lights went out. He claimed he left immediately, which campus security logs confirm. Other students reported seeing our five leaving the building separately between 8:30 and 9:15. After Alden said class was dismissed, Alex noted, so they stayed behind. Apparently. Witness statements were contradictory. Some said they heard arguing from the classroom after the power came back on. Campus security did their rounds at 10 p.m., reported the building was empty. Walter pulled out a campus map, pointing to the Humanities building. No security cameras in that section of campus in 2001. The ones at the main entrances mysteriously malfunctioned that night. Power surge from the storm, according to the tech report. Convenient, Alex murmured. Too convenient, Walter agreed. Next morning, all 5 dorm rooms were empty, beds made, no signs of packing or planning to leave. Personal items left behind, wallets, medications, Lena's insulin. Whatever happened, they didn't plan it. Alex flipped through the crime scene photos from the dorm rooms. Everything looked normal, except for the haunting absence of the people who should have been there. And the duffel bag? She asked. Walter's face tightened. Found in locker number 137, exactly 11 weeks after they vanished. 5 student IDs, notes that made little sense, and that notebook with the blood on it. Preliminary tests matched the blood type to Priya Singh, but what? Walter hesitated, then said quietly, "The evidence disappeared from the lab before DNA confirmation." When it was returned 2 days later, the sample was contaminated. Alex stared at him. Disappeared? How is that not in the official report? Politics, Walter spat the word like it tasted bad. The university was under pressure. Enrollment was down after September 11th, and 5 missing students was a PR nightmare. The FBI took over, and suddenly evidence was being mishandled, leads weren't being followed, and everyone was pushing for closure without answers. He closed the folder with a finality that spoke of years of frustration. They wanted it to go away, Alex, and eventually it did. No bodies, no crime scene, no conclusive evidence, just 5 empty beds and a lot of questions. Alex sat back, processing everything. And Alden? What happened to him? Resigned at the end of the semester, cited personal reasons, disappeared as completely as his students. Walter's eyes narrowed. Though not before receiving a substantial research grant from some shadowy government agency. The timing always struck me as odd. Alex nodded slowly, pieces beginning to align in her mind. "I need to find Alden, Walter. Do you have any leads?" Walter hesitated, then reached for a small notebook in his desk drawer. "I've been tracking him on and off for years, not officially, just personal interest. Last I heard, he was living under an assumed name in a cabin outside Millfield, about 2 hours north. Been keeping tabs through property records and utility payments, but I haven't actually verified it in person." "That's more than I had before," Alex said, making a note of the address Walter provided. "Thank you." Walter studied her face. "Be careful, Hayes. Whatever happened to those kids, I've always had the feeling that somebody powerful wanted it buried." "It's been 20 years, Alex reminded him. "Maybe they've stopped watching." Walter's laugh was hollow. "People with that kind of power don't stop watching. They just get better at hiding." As if to punctuate his warning, the overhead light flickered, once, twice, then steadied. Alex suppressed a shiver. Coincidence, she told herself, nothing more. But as she gathered the case files, she couldn't shake the sensation of unseen eyes tracking her movements, of hidden forces already aligning against her. 5 students had disappeared without a trace. Whatever they had discovered, whatever had happened to them, someone had gone to great lengths to ensure it remained hidden. 20 years was a long time, but some secrets were meant to stay buried forever. Which of these 5 students do you think discovered the truth first? Share your theories below. The drive to Millfield took longer than expected, the narrow country roads winding through dense forest that seemed to close in around Alex's car like a living entity. By the time she reached the turnoff to Alden's cabin, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the overgrown dirt road. The cabin itself was small, rustic, and clearly designed for isolation. No neighboring houses were visible, just endless trees and the distant sound of running water. Smoke curled from the chimney, suggesting that someone was home. Alex parked her car a discreet distance away and approached on foot, her hand resting near her holstered weapon. She had no warrant, no official reason to be here, just a desperate need for answers and a growing sense that time was running out. The man who answered her knock bore little resemblance to the stern professor in the case file photos. Thomas Alden, once distinguished and commanding, was now stooped and frail, his hair white and wispy, his eyes sunken into a face lined with what looked like decades of guilt. "Professor Alden?" Alex asked, showing her badge. The old man didn't seem surprised. "I've been expecting someone," he said, his voice a raspy shadow of what it once had been. "For 20 years I've been waiting. Come in, detective. The night grows cold." The cabin's interior was Spartan, a single room with a small kitchenette, a wood stove, a desk piled with books, and a narrow bed. The walls were lined with more books and maps and what appeared to be scientific journals. "You know why I'm here?" Alex said, declining the offered seat. Alden nodded, lowering himself into a worn armchair. "Lena, Devon, Priya, Miles, and Tessa," he recited, the names falling from his lips like a long-practiced litany. "Not a day passes that I don't think of them." "What happened to them?" Alex asked directly. Alden's gaze drifted to the window where darkness was rapidly descending. "They discovered the truth, a truth I was party to, complicit in, a truth I tried to protect them from in the end." "What truth?" Alex pressed. Alden was silent for a long moment, his gaze turning inward. "It began innocently enough," he finally said. "Research into memory formation, trauma response, fear conditioning, funded by the university, peer-reviewed, everything above board." He shifted in his chair, wincing at some phantom pain. "Then came September 11th. Suddenly there was new interest in our work, government interest, the Department of Defense specifically. They approached with an offer, additional funding, state-of-the-art facilities, but classified status. Research into psychological manipulation, fear response control, memory implantation." "Mind control," Alex said flatly. Alden flinched. "That's what Devon called it when they found out. We preferred cognitive security research. The potential applications were significant, treating PTSD, enhancing interrogation resistance for soldiers, rehabilitating trauma victims." "And the darker applications," Alex pressed. "Interrogation techniques? Psychological warfare?" Alden's silence was answer enough. "How did the students discover it?" Alex asked. "Tessa," Alden said, something like pride flickering across his features. "Brilliant, skeptical Tessa. She was researching university funding for a paper on academic ethics, found discrepancies in the budget, traced them to my department, started asking questions." He rose shakily, moving to his desk, where he retrieved a worn leather journal. "She convinced the campus paper to investigate further. To access restricted areas, she needed help. Devon agreed immediately. Priya had the technical skills to bypass security systems. Miles could charm information out of anyone, and Lena's position as RA gave her access to master keys. They found the facility, Alex guessed. Alden nodded grimly. A sub-basement beneath the Humanities building, converted in secret during summer renovations. Official records showed routine maintenance, but they actually installed an entire research facility, labs, observation rooms, specialized equipment. The students discovered a maintenance tunnel that hadn't been properly secured. They photographed everything. And then they confronted you, Alex prompted. November 13th, after class. They had evidence, documents, photos taken from restricted areas, server data. They threatened to expose everything unless I helped them. And God help me, I agreed. His hands trembled as he opened the journal. I was already having doubts. The research had evolved beyond what I considered ethical. Test subjects experiencing severe side effects, memory gaps, personality changes, Dean Chambers pushing for faster results, more extreme methods. What happened that night? Alex asked, her voice softening despite herself. Alden's eyes glistened with unshed tears. I was going to show them everything, the facility, the research, the evidence they would need to expose it all. We agreed to meet after the power came back on at 8:15, but someone had been monitoring Tessa's computer, listening to their conversations. Chambers knew. He was waiting with security when we arrived at the access point. And then? Alden's voice dropped to a whisper. They were separated, taken into the facility. I tried to intervene, but he gestured to a long scar visible on his forearm. I was forcibly retired, you might say, told that if I ever spoke of what happened, I would disappear as well. Alex felt a chill run through her. What happened to the students, Professor? Alden met her gaze directly for the first time. I don't know for certain. I was unconscious when they were taken. When I woke, I was here, with a new identity, sufficient funds, and a very clear warning never to return to North Ridge. He held out the journal. But I made inquiries carefully over the years. Rumors, whispers, fragments I've pieced together. It's all in here. Alex took the journal hesitantly. Why are you giving me this? Because I'm dying, Detective, Alden said simply. Cancer, terminal. I have perhaps months left, and I cannot face whatever comes next with this burden still on my soul. He leaned forward, his eyes suddenly intense. Find them, Detective Hayes. Find the truth. But be careful. Chambers may be retired now, but the people behind him, the program itself, it didn't end with North Ridge. It evolved, went deeper underground. As if on cue, headlights swept across the cabin window, a vehicle approaching on the dirt road. Alden's face drained of color. They're still watching me. You need to leave. Now take the back door through the woods. Your car isn't safe. Come with me, Alex urged, already moving toward the indicated exit. I can protect you. Get your testimony formally. Alden shook his head. I'm beyond protection, Detective. Too late for me, but not for them, not for the truth. He pressed a small key into her hand. Humanities building, basement access panel behind the old boiler. This opens it. The facility is still there, abandoned but intact. The evidence you need is there too. The approaching vehicle was closer now, its engine a low growl in the gathering darkness. Go, Alden urged. And Detective, trust no one. The same words from Priya's notebook, a warning that had come too late for 5 students, but might still save one determined detective. Alex slipped out the back door and into the dense woods just as car doors slammed in front of the cabin. She clutched Alden's journal and the small key, her heart pounding as she made her way through the underbrush, guided only by the faint moonlight filtering through the trees. Behind her, the cabin door crashed open, voices raised in sharp commands. A single gunshot shattered the night, followed by silence more terrible than any sound. Alex froze, every instinct screaming at her to go back, to help, to confront whoever had just silenced perhaps the only person who knew the full truth about what had happened 20 years ago. But Alden's final warning echoed in her mind. The truth was what mattered now, the truth that might finally reveal the fate of 5 students who had discovered something they shouldn't have and paid the ultimate price. With grim determination, Alex continued through the woods, away from the cabin, away from the men who would silence her as they had silenced Alden, toward North Ridge University, where answers waited in the darkness beneath. If you were Detective Hayes, which clue would you follow first? Drop your investigative strategy in the comments. The Humanities building stood silhouetted against the night sky, its Gothic architecture even more imposing in darkness. Alex approached cautiously, keenly aware that she was now operating without backup, without official sanction, and very possibly in the crosshairs of the same people who had made 5 students disappear. Alden's journal had revealed disturbing details about Project Echo, a classified research program focused on memory manipulation, fear conditioning, and psychological control mechanisms. What had begun as legitimate academic research had transformed, under government oversight, into something far more sinister. Test subjects, initially volunteers from the student body who believed they were participating in simple psychology studies, were subjected to increasingly extreme methods. According to Alden's notes, the 5 students had discovered evidence of these experiments through Tessa's investigation into university funding. They had confronted Alden, who, already harboring doubts about the ethical implications of his work, had agreed to help them expose the program. But they had underestimated the reach and ruthlessness of those overseeing Project Echo. Using the service entrance key from Walter, Alex slipped into the Humanities building. The corridors were silent, most of the faculty and staff having left hours ago. She made her way to the basement, guided by the beam of her flashlight and the floor plans she had memorized from Priya's notebook. The old boiler room was exactly as described. Abandoned, thick with dust, the massive heating unit long since replaced by a more modern system elsewhere in the building. Behind it, just as Alden had indicated, was a panel that looked like an ordinary electrical access point. The key fit perfectly. The panel swung open to reveal not electrical components, but a narrow staircase descending into darkness. Alex hesitated, every instinct warning her of the danger ahead. Then she thought of Miles's smile, of the lives cut short, of the families still waiting for answers after 20 years. She began her descent. The staircase led to a reinforced door with a keypad lock, inactive now, its electronic components dark. The door stood slightly ajar, as if the last people to leave had departed in haste. Alex pushed it open, wincing at the low groan of metal hinges. Beyond lay a corridor that matched Priya's diagram exactly, sterile, institutional, with doors leading to various rooms labeled for their functions: observation, testing, subject preparation, memory modification. The air was stale but breathable, suggesting some minimal ventilation system remained operational. Emergency lights cast a faint blue glow, creating shadows that seemed to move at the corners of Alex's vision. She moved cautiously down the corridor, checking each room. Most were empty, stripped of equipment, though ghostly outlines on the walls showed where cabinets and monitors had once been mounted. In the testing room, examination chairs with restraints remained, their leather cracked with age. The memory modification lab was the most intact, containing what appeared to be specialized equipment, a chair reminiscent of a dentist's, surrounded by now obsolete computer terminals and monitoring devices. On a dusty shelf, Alex found vials of chemicals with faded labels, some bearing government classification markers. But it was the observation room that yielded the most valuable discovery. A storage cabinet in the corner, overlooked in what appeared to have been a hasty evacuation, contained hard drives, paper files, and most crucially, videotapes labeled with dates, including November 13, 2001. Alex found herself wondering how such critical evidence could have remained untouched for 20 years. The answer lay in Alden's journal. After the student's disappearance, the project had relocated to a more secure facility off campus. The cleanup had been rushed, with the government more concerned about moving essential equipment and research than thoroughly sanitizing the site. The university had been ordered to seal the sub-basement permanently, with strict instructions never to renovate or demolish the area. What better place to hide evidence than a location everyone had been ordered to forget? As she gathered these materials, her flashlight beam caught something etched into the wall near the floor. Crude letters scratched into the paint. L.O. was here. Lena Ortiz. Proof that at least one of the students had been in this facility. A sudden noise from the corridor froze Alex in place. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, approaching the observation room. She quickly extinguished her flashlight and pressed herself against the wall beside the door, one hand on her weapon. The footsteps stopped just outside. A beam of light swept across the room, lingering on the open cabinet where Alex had been gathering evidence. Detective Hayes? A familiar voice called softly. "It's Walter. Are you down here?" Alex remained silent, suspicion overriding relief. How had Walter known where to find her? Who else knew she was here? "Alex, I know you're here," Walter continued, his voice echoing slightly in the empty room. "Your car is parked 2 blocks away. Security reported a break-in at the Humanities building. It's not safe." Still, Alex hesitated. Alden's final warning echoed in her mind. Trust no one. "Alex," Walter said, a new urgency in his tone, "I followed you to Alden's cabin. I've been keeping tabs on the place myself since I got a tip about it last month. I saw what happened. Alden is dead. They're coming for you next. We need to go. Now." Decision made, Alex stepped into view, her weapon lowered but ready. "How did you find me, Walter?" The retired detective stood in the doorway, his weathered face grim in the beam of his flashlight. "When you left my office, I had a feeling you'd go straight to Alden. I've been watching his movements since I located him, not continuously, just periodic checks when the case heated up again. When I saw those men arrive, I knew what would happen next." He gestured to the evidence Alex had gathered. "Is that what I think it is?" Alex nodded. "Videotapes from November 13th, files on the project, hard drives. Walter, they were conducting mind control experiments here, using students as test subjects without their knowledge." Walter's expression darkened. "I always knew something wasn't right about this case. The way it was handled, the pressure to close it without answers." He glanced nervously toward the corridor. "But we can't stay here. Campus security is doing a sweep of the building, and they're not the only ones looking for you." Alex quickly packed the evidence into her bag. "There's an emergency exit at the end of the corridor, according to Priya's diagram. It leads to a maintenance tunnel that connects to the science building." Walter nodded. "Lead the way." They moved swiftly through the abandoned facility, the beam of Walter's flashlight illuminating their path. The emergency exit was where Priya had indicated, a heavy door with a push bar, designed to allow escape in case of fire or other emergency. Alex pressed the bar. The door swung open to reveal a narrow tunnel, pipes, and electrical conduits running along its ceiling. "This way," she said, stepping into the passage. They had gone perhaps 20 yards when Walter spoke again, his voice echoing strangely in the confined space. "You know, I always wondered what they found down there," he said conversationally. "What was so important that 5 students had to disappear?" Alex paused, something in his tone raising alarm bells. "You never knew about the facility? In all your investigation?" "There were rumors," Walter replied, still behind her. "Nothing concrete, nothing like this." Alex turned slowly to face him. "But you told me earlier that there were rumors about government-funded research, that it made sense when I mentioned it." Walter's expression changed subtly, a flicker of calculation replacing concern. Did I? Memory's not what it used to be? Alex's hand moved toward her weapon. Walter, how did you know to check on Alden's cabin tonight? You said you only did periodic checks. The retired detective's smile didn't reach his eyes. We got an alert. Movement sensors on the property perimeter. Standard security measure for monitoring persons of interest. We? Alex repeated softly. Who's we, Walter? For a moment, neither moved. Then Walter sighed, a sound of genuine regret. 20 years I've kept this secret, he said. 20 years of watching, waiting for someone to get too close. Chambers said you'd be trouble the moment you requested the case files. You're working with Chambers, Alex said, the betrayal hitting her like a physical blow. You've been part of this all along. Walter nodded. Security consultant for Project Echo. My job was to ensure local law enforcement never got too close to the truth. To manage the investigation, control the narrative. You let 5 students disappear, Alex said, her voice tight with anger. You helped cover it up. I did what was necessary, Walter replied, his hand moving slowly toward his coat pocket. What I was ordered to do for national security. Alex drew her weapon. Don't move, Walter. You're under arrest. Walter's laugh was hollow. For what exactly? A 20-year-old case with no bodies, no crime scene, against the word of a decorated detective? Against the resources of people who can make problems disappear? His hand emerged from his pocket, holding not a weapon, but a small device that looked like a remote control. I'm truly sorry, Alex. I liked you, but you're asking questions that can't be answered, pursuing truths that can't be revealed. What happened to them, Walter? Alex demanded, her weapon steady despite the turmoil inside her. Lena, Devon, Priya, Miles, Tessa, what did you do to them? Walter's finger hovered over the device. They were given choices, Alex. Choices about how they wanted to disappear. Before Alex could respond, Walter pressed a button on the device. From somewhere in the tunnel ahead, a low hum began, growing in intensity. Memory modification was just the beginning, Walter said, backing away. Project Echo evolved. Perception manipulation. Reality distortion. Right now, for instance, you're not actually in a tunnel beneath Northridge University. The hum grew louder, and with it came a strange distortion in Alex's vision, as if the walls of the tunnel were rippling, dissolving. You're in a specialized facility in Virginia, Walter continued, his voice seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere. You have been for 3 days, ever since you visited Alden's cabin, which, by the way, has been empty for years. Alden died in 2015. Alex's head spun, her grip on her weapon faltering. You're lying. I wish I were, Walter said, his form becoming indistinct as the tunnel walls appeared to melt around them. The technology has come a long way in 20 years. We can create complete immersive environments now, manipulate perception in real time, make someone believe they're investigating a case when they're actually strapped to a chair, their brain chemistry being altered. Alex stumbled, reaching for the wall to steady herself, but her hand passed through what should have been solid concrete. This isn't real, she whispered. Some of it is, Walter admitted. The case files, the students, their disappearance. But your investigation, your discoveries, a carefully constructed scenario designed to see how much you really knew, who you'd contacted, how close you were to the truth. The tunnel was dissolving completely now, reality seeming to fracture around Alex. Through the distortion, she could see glimpses of something else. Clinical lights, monitoring equipment, faces peering down at her. Why? She managed to ask, fighting against the disorientation. Why me? Walter's voice was fading, merging with other voices that Alex couldn't identify. Because you wouldn't let it go, Alex. Because you were getting too close. Because Miles Bennett was more important to you than you let on. The last vestiges of the tunnel faded away, replaced by the stark reality of a laboratory not unlike the abandoned facility she thought she'd been exploring. Alex found herself restrained in a chair, surrounded by monitoring equipment and serious-faced technicians in white coats. And standing over her, his expression a mixture of regret and clinical detachment, was Walter Grimes. "Welcome back to reality, Detective Hayes," he said. "Now let's talk about what really happened to those 5 students and why you're going to help us make sure their story remains untold. What do you think happened to Lena? The truth might be darker than you imagine." Alex's mind reeled, fighting against the disorientation of having one reality stripped away and replaced with another. The restraints on her wrists and ankles were real enough, cold metal biting into her skin as she instinctively struggled against them. "Vital signs stabilizing," a female technician reported clinically. "Cognitive functions returning to baseline." "Good," Walter nodded. "Increase the clarity factor to full. I want her completely lucid for this conversation." A sudden sharpness flooded Alex's perception, as if a fog she hadn't known was there had been swept away. The laboratory came into crystal-clear focus, state-of-the-art equipment surrounding her, screens displaying what appeared to be her own brain activity, and a team of at least 6 technicians monitoring everything. "Where am I?" Alex demanded, her voice hoarse. "What have you done to me?" "As I said, a specialized facility in Virginia," Walter replied. "You've been here for 3 days, experiencing a controlled perception scenario designed to map your investigation and identify any co-conspirators." "Co-conspirators?" Alex repeated incredulously. "I'm a detective investigating a cold case." Walter sighed, pulling up a chair to sit facing her. "Alex, let's be honest with each other. You never accepted the official explanation for Miles's disappearance. You joined the police force specifically to gain access to that case. Your entire career has been building toward this moment." The truth of his words stung. "They deserved justice," she said quietly. "All 5 of them." "Justice," Walter echoed thoughtfully. "An interesting concept. Tell me, what do you think happened to them, based on your investigation, real and simulated?" Alex hesitated, then decided there was nothing to lose in sharing her theory. "They discovered the unethical experiments being conducted in the secret facility. They confronted Alden, who agreed to help them expose it. But Dean Chambers and security intercepted them. After that," she paused, "I think they were forcibly silenced, killed or permanently detained somewhere." Walter shook his head, something like genuine sadness crossing his features. "Not quite." He nodded to one of the technicians, who handed him a tablet. "Let me show you what really happened." He turned the tablet to face Alex. On the screen was security footage dated November 13, 2001. It showed the 5 students entering what appeared to be the hidden facility with Alden. They were confronted by security personnel and a distinguished-looking man Alex recognized from photos as Dr. Richard Chambers, then Dean of Northridge University. They were taken into separate rooms, Walter narrated as the footage continued, questioned about what they knew, who they'd told. Alden was injured trying to intervene. That part of your scenario was accurate. The footage shifted to an office setting, where each student was shown individually speaking with Chambers. There was no audio, but the body language told a story of intimidation, fear, and ultimately, resignation. They were given choices, Walter continued, not good choices, but choices nonetheless. Devin Price and Tessa Morgan chose new identities, complete dissociation from their former lives. They were relocated, given new backgrounds, new careers. They live quietly now, never speaking of what happened. He swiped to a new screen showing surveillance photos of 2 middle-aged people who bore only passing resemblances to the students Alex had seen in the case files. Devin is now Daniel Peterson, accountant in Portland, Oregon, married, 2 children. Tessa is Teresa Miller, corporate attorney in Chicago, never married. Alex stared at the images, trying to reconcile them with the young faces from 20 years ago. They just accepted that, left everything behind. When the alternative is presented clearly enough, most people choose survival, Walter said simply. Miles Bennett chose a different path. Another swipe, another image. Miles strapped to a chair similar to the one Alex now occupied, his expression vacant. Miles resisted the initial memory suppression protocols, Walter explained. His theatrical training made him more resistant to suggestion, more aware of performance and reality distortion. He became a long-term research subject, helping us refine the technology you're experiencing now. The cold, clinical description of Miles's fate sent a chill through Alex that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. You experimented on him? For how long? Until 2007, Walter said, his tone neutral. He suffered a cerebral hemorrhage during a procedure, an unfortunate loss for the research team. Alex closed her eyes briefly, absorbing the blow. Miles, subjected to years of experiments, dying alone in a facility like this one. All while she had been searching for answers, unaware of his true fate. "And Priya?" she asked, dreading the answer. Priya Singh was problematic, Walter admitted. Her technical skills made her dangerous. She understood too much about the systems, the security protocols. She was deported back to India with a clear understanding that her family's safety depended on her silence. He showed another surveillance photo, this one of an older woman working at a small computer repair shop in Mumbai. "She's watched, of course, always will be." "And Lena?" Alex asked, though something in Walter's expression told her this would be the worst revelation of all. Walter was silent for a moment, as if weighing how much to reveal. "Lena Ortiz was the moral compass of the group," he finally said, unwavering in her principles, unwilling to compromise. She refused all options presented to her: new identity, research subject, deportation. She threatened to expose everything, regardless of the consequences. He swiped to a final image, a medical report with Protocol 7 stamped across its header. Protocol 7 was a last resort, Walter explained, his voice softer now. An experimental neurochemical procedure designed to create a complete dissociative state. The subject retains basic functions, but loses all sense of personal identity, memories, emotional connections. A blank slate. Alex felt physically ill. "You erased her? Erased who she was?" "The procedure was successful," Walter continued, as if she hadn't spoken. "Lena Ortiz ceased to exist in any meaningful sense. The physical shell was given a new administrative identity and placed in a long-term care facility in Arizona, where she remains to this day, catatonic, unresponsive, but physically healthy." He put the tablet down, meeting Alex's horrified gaze directly. "That is the truth you've been seeking, Detective Hayes. That is the fate of the 5 students who disappeared from Northridge University 20 years ago." Alex struggled to process the enormity of what she was hearing, the monstrous reality behind the mystery she'd dedicated her career to solving. "Why are you telling me this? Why show me the truth, if you're just going to silence me too?" Walter leaned forward, his expression earnest. "Because you're being offered the same choices they were, Alex, and I'm hoping you'll make a wiser decision than Lena did." He gestured to the room around them. Project Echo evolved into something far beyond its original scope. What began as memory manipulation research became the foundation for the most advanced psychological operations program in history. The ability to control perception, to implant or remove memories, to reshape reality itself, these capabilities are too valuable to expose, too dangerous to lose. "So, what are my options?" Alex asked bitterly. "New identity? Research subject? Protocol 7? "Actually," Walter said, "we're offering you something different. A position with the program." Alex stared at him in disbelief. "You want me to join you, after what you've done?" "You've demonstrated remarkable resilience to our techniques," Walter explained. "Your mind fought the simulated reality, questioned inconsistencies, maintained critical thinking even under extreme cognitive manipulation. Those are rare qualities, qualities the program values. He stood, pacing slowly beside her chair. "We're not the villains you imagine us to be, Alex. The work we do has applications beyond what you've seen, helping trauma victims recover, treating PTSD in veterans, rehabilitating violent offenders. Yes, there are darker applications in intelligence and military operations, but the potential for good is equally significant." "And if I refuse?" Alex asked, already knowing the answer. Walter's expression hardened slightly. "Then we move to less desirable alternatives. New identity would be my recommendation. You have the psychological profile to adapt successfully. The other options are less pleasant." Alex fell silent, her mind racing. The restraints holding her were unyielding, escape impossible. The facility itself was likely highly secure, probably underground, possibly not even in Virginia despite what Walter had claimed. She had no allies here, no way to contact the outside world. But something didn't add up. The elaborate simulation, the detailed revelation of what had happened to the students, Walter's personal involvement in her case. It all suggested an investment beyond merely silencing another investigator. "Why me?" she asked suddenly. "You could have stopped my investigation at any point, had me reassigned, discredited, any number of interventions. Why go to all this trouble?" "We've been monitoring your interest in the case since you joined the force," Walter explained. "Initially, you weren't a serious concern, just another person with a personal connection grasping at straws. But when you began making real progress 6 months ago, accessing sealed records, interviewing witnesses we thought were secure, we took notice." He sighed. "We've learned from past mistakes. Abrupt disappearances create more questions than they answer. We needed to understand exactly what you knew, who else might be involved, and whether you had secured evidence somewhere. The simulation was the most efficient way to extract that information." "And now you know everything," Alex said flatly. "Now we know everything," Walter confirmed, "and we're impressed. Your detective work was exceptional, your intuition almost uncanny. Those are valuable skills to us." As Walter turned to leave, Alex called after him. "Miles, was he really special to me? Or was that part of the simulation too?" Walter paused at the door. "That part was real. You dated briefly before his disappearance. His family confirmed it during the initial investigation." A sad smile touched his lips. "Some truths are too deeply embedded to manipulate, even with our technology." The door closed behind him, leaving Alex alone with the technicians and the impossible choice before her. Join the program that had destroyed 5 lives and countless others. Accept a new identity, abandoning everything and everyone she knew, or face the oblivion of Protocol 7, ending not in death, but in something far more terrifying, the complete erasure of self. As the technicians continued their work around her, seemingly indifferent to her plight, Alex closed her eyes and thought of Lena Ortiz, who had refused to compromise her principles even when faced with the ultimate threat. Of Miles Bennett, whose smile had haunted her for 20 years, who had suffered and died alone in a facility just like this one. And in that moment of clarity, Alex Hayes made her decision. If this story has kept you on the edge of your seat, hit the like button so more mystery fans can find our channel. 6 months later, a light rain fell on the Memorial Garden at Northridge University. The 5 stone markers, one for each missing student, glistened in the gray afternoon light, their surfaces slick and reflective like dark mirrors. A solitary figure stood before them, protected from the drizzle by a black umbrella. Dr. Alexandra Hayes, newly appointed head of the university's psychology department, placed a single white rose on each marker before stepping back to observe a moment of silence. To anyone watching, it would have appeared to be a simple act of remembrance, a new faculty member paying respects to a tragic chapter in the university's history. They wouldn't have noticed the way her fingers lingered on Miles Bennett's marker, or the slight tremble in her hand as she touched Lena Ortiz's stone. Professor Hayes? Alex turned to see Dean Harriet Blackwell approaching under her own umbrella, her expression carefully neutral. "Dean Blackwell," Alex acknowledged with a professional nod. "Just paying my respects before the faculty meeting." The dean's gaze flicked to the memorial stones, then back to Alex. "A terrible tragedy. Even after all these years, the university feels their loss." "Yes," Alex agreed, her voice steady. "Some losses can never be fully processed." An uncomfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the soft patter of rain. "The committee was impressed with your research proposal," Blackwell finally said, clearly eager to change the subject. "Cognitive resilience in trauma survivors, very timely, very relevant to our department's focus areas." "Thank you," Alex said. "I'm looking forward to beginning the work. The university's facilities are exceptional." "Yes, well," Blackwell shifted her weight, glancing at her watch. "We should head to the meeting. The committee members are waiting." As they walked together toward the administration building, the dean maintained a stream of small talk about department budgets and upcoming faculty events. Alex responded appropriately, playing her role with practiced ease. No one watching would have suspected that beneath her professional demeanor, Dr. Alexandra Hayes was executing the first phase of a plan years in the making, a plan that had begun the moment she had made her choice in that facility in Virginia. She had accepted Walter's offer to join Project ECHO, expressing appropriate reluctance, followed by pragmatic acceptance. Her psychological profile, resilient, adaptable, detail-oriented, had made her an ideal candidate for the program's academic outreach division, tasked with identifying research that might benefit the project while maintaining its secrecy. Her assignment to Northridge University, arranged through Walter's influence, had been presented as both practical and symbolic, a way to monitor the site of the original incident while establishing a legitimate research presence in cognitive psychology. What Walter and his superiors didn't know, couldn't know, was that Alex had never truly surrendered. In the 6 months since her recruitment, she had been meticulously gathering evidence, building a secure dossier of Project ECHO's operations, personnel, and most damning of all, its victims. The position at Northridge had given her access to the abandoned facility beneath the Humanities Building, which, contrary to Walter's claims during the simulation, actually did still exist, though it had been stripped of most evidence years ago. Nevertheless, using specialized equipment she had smuggled in piece by piece, Alex had recovered data from old wiring, found bloodstains the cleanup crew had missed, and documented the layout exactly as Priya's notebook had described it. Most importantly, her security clearance within Project ECHO had allowed her to locate the survivors: Devin Price in Portland, Tessa Morgan in Chicago, Priya Singh in Mumbai, and most heartbreakingly, Lena Ortiz in a care facility in Arizona, her vacant eyes showing no recognition, no awareness of the visitor who sat with her for hours, speaking softly about justice long delayed. "Professor Hayes?" Dean Blackwell's voice broke through her thoughts. "Did you hear me?" "I'm sorry," Alex said, offering an apologetic smile. "I was thinking about my research parameters." "You were saying?" "I said the committee is particularly interested in the memory formation aspects of your proposal," Blackwell repeated, a strange emphasis on her words. "The way traumatic experiences can be processed or modified." Alex maintained her neutral expression, though her pulse quickened slightly. "Memory is a fascinating field," she agreed carefully. "So malleable, yet so essential to our sense of self." They had reached the administration building, its grand facade imposing against the gray sky. As they entered the lobby, Blackwell paused, glancing around to ensure they were alone. "I should mention," she said, her voice lowered, "that Dr. Chambers will be joining us virtually for your presentation. He's quite interested in your work." The name landed exactly as intended, a warning, a reminder that Alex was being watched, that the former dean, now supposedly retired but still clearly involved with Project Echo, was monitoring her activities. "I look forward to meeting him," Alex said smoothly. "His reputation precedes him." Blackwell studied her for a moment, searching for any reaction beyond the appropriate professional interest. Finding none, she nodded and led the way toward the conference room. What neither Blackwell nor Chambers knew was that tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, a carefully prepared data package would be released simultaneously to selected journalists, law enforcement agencies, and human rights organizations around the world. Tomorrow, the full truth about Project Echo, its origins, its operations, and its victims, would finally be exposed. Devin Price had already been moved to a safe location, his wife and children with him. Tessa Morgan had taken an unscheduled vacation to a country without extradition. Priya Singh had disappeared from her watched apartment in Mumbai, her technological skills allowing her to vanish in a way her watchers never anticipated. Only Lena remained where she was, her condition making her both the most vulnerable and, ironically, the most protected of the survivors. What could they do to someone already subjected to Protocol 7? What worse fate could they inflict? As Alex entered the conference room filled with faculty members and Project Echo operatives disguised as academic colleagues, she felt a strange calm descend over her. 20 years ago, 5 students had discovered a terrible truth and had paid an unbearable price for their courage. Tomorrow, their story would finally be told. Whatever happened to Alex herself, whether she escaped in the chaos that would follow the revelations, whether she was captured and subjected to the same fate as Miles or Lena, whether she simply disappeared into the system of new identities and manufactured lives that Project Echo had perfected, she had fulfilled her promise to those 5 students. The truth would no longer remain buried. As she prepared to present her research to the committee, Alex thought of the small device concealed in her apartment, set to activate at precisely 9 a.m. the following morning. Of the evidence securely stored beyond the reach of even Project Echo's formidable resources. Of the 5 stone markers in the memorial garden, soon to become symbols not just of tragedy, but of justice long delayed. "Whenever you're ready, Professor Hayes," Dean Blackwell said, gesturing to the presentation screen. Alex nodded and began speaking, her voice steady and professional, betraying nothing of the reckoning that waited just hours away. In the memorial garden, rain continued to fall on the 5 stone markers, washing them clean. Next week, we'll explore another chilling disappearance. Subscribe now so you don't miss it.